So next week is the finale of the Royal Tutor, and we don't know what we will see for next week's episode, because in this week's episode it was revealed of Heine's past, and we know that if Heine's past was to be told, it was pretty self-explanatory in this week's episode. So we remember from last week's episode, Rosenberg told us a little portion of Heine's past, how he used to work voluntarily at a church called Maria Betsira. And then later in the episode, the princess and Heine saw an article in the newspaper saying that a criminal infiltrated into the palace. Now, while the princes were not believing such an article, because remember with the military academy one and how Bruno and Kai were falsely accused in it, but of course it was written and they told the actual facts back in it, they didn't really believe in this one. But we saw Heine's attitude turn a little bit more serious, and he said, suppose that criminal was me. So in this week's episode, we had where he told the princess, he gave them a special lesson in order to find out whether this article was actually true or not. And if it was false, then they can let it be. But if it was true, they could not take it lightly, because suppose they were the kings and they had their successor. This can actually be detrimental to the palace and also the entire country. So what they did was they went around town asking questions about who's the person that wrote this article and published in the newspaper. They came to find out it was the same person who published the article at the military academy, the false one, and it was by the man's name was Gregor, but he changed it to Carl Fishner. Now, he was paid off to write that article, and we suppose that the person who paid him off was Rosenberg. I mean, he was the most suspicious person that was introduced into the series, so it's very fitting that he was the one that did it, and he gave him a large sum to write the article and also to move and do whatever he wants with the money. Of course, he never moved, so that's how the princes were able to find him. So after they were done talking to him, they went to the chambers within their palace, and in there they found documentation telling the history of their kingdom and also their father's coronation or ascendance to the throne. And within those articles, they found about this criminal, and this criminal attempted assassination and abduction of the prince. And this happened during the time that their father was a prince, and it came to find out that criminal was Heine himself. So they were shocked by this news, as well as those who are watching, and myself as well, because we can't possibly believe that Heine was the one that tried to kill Viktor. Now, you know it's serious business when Viktor himself says, I'm not going to speak to you as your father, but speak to you as the king, but as your father. So he explains his history with Heine. We know they have a deep history with each other, a deep bond with each other, and that Viktor trusts Heine more than anyone else, hence why he allowed him to become the royal tutor. So it came to find out that Heine was an orphan, he was poor, and of course Viktor, being of royal bloodline, he would sneak out at night, just like how Witch does, but to work in a cafe. Here, Viktor sneaks out at night and just to observe the town, observe the people, to understand, his country better. And whenever he sneaks out, he always brings with him like a pocket watch in order to tell the time, so that he can come back in time before curfew and before the guards can check in on the rooms. Of course, his watch was stolen by some runaway kids, and to find out, that's how he stumbled upon Heine. So that's when they started to build their bond and their friendship and everything, and it was really nice. There was a point in the episode where, even though Viktor never really told of his status, he told Heine and said that if I ever became king, I would change how our kingdom, how our country is set up, because he realized how imbalanced the entire country is. It was basically the have and the have-nots, and it was like the haves had everything, and those who did not had to suffer with the scraps and everything. And that was basically Heine. And Heine was looking forward to not knowing that Viktor was actually of royal bloodline. Now, unfortunately, Victor's episode, his escapes from the palace had to cut short because there came a day where it was a harvest festival, and when he escaped from his room, that's when the guards and everyone decided to check everywhere. And when they checked in his room in particular, they found that he was not there. So they went on a search for Viktor, and they found him with Heine. So they're both going on a run for it, and one of the guards decided to shoot Heine in order to stop him because they think that he was the one that took Viktor from the palace, and Viktor jumped in the way of the shot, getting injured. And we saw back in episode 9 of Heine's skills in hand-to-hand combat. Now we know the reason how he has those skills because of the upbringing he had from childhood to now. And just before he was able to injure one of the guards, Viktor did stop him. Of course, he was jailed and sentenced to prison because the guards saying that Heine was the one that abducted Viktor and that he used him as a shield, but Viktor did it on his own will. But eventually Viktor explained everything to his father at the time, who was king, and Heine was freed. Now when Viktor became king, he decided to build that same church that Heine volunteered at. And we know, even though Heine grew up poor and that the fact that he didn't have the money or the resources to get an education, he strove hard, and hence why he's so versatile in his academics and everything else to teach at that church. So now that the princes know of this, it's only the royal family that knows of Heine's secret, because if anyhow the news came out of the palace, not only will the public look to them and have a discerning eye towards them, but also for the fact that they kept the criminal, and rumors will spread, and false rumors at that. Even if the facts were presented to them, no one would believe them because they're quicker to believe a rumor before they actually believe the truth. So it came to be that Heine, once Viktor told the truth, or the boys went to search for the truth themselves, he left a note of resignation and stepped down from his position as royal tutor. So now next week, we don't know if if the boys will be able to bring him back as the royal tutor, or he'll never come back. He'll disappear off the map, and that will be it. And Viktor will lose a longtime friend. And it's so sad to see that, because it's like, who would have thought all this went down? Now, I do have something to say next week. I will explain it next week, something that I found online. So I will explain. I won't explain it this week, but I'm really shocked by this week's episode a lot, because I did not suspect any of this to happen. I knew Viktor and Heine were very close, but I didn't think that their past had led to this, hence why Heine was so secretive, and all because Rosenberg decided to dip his nose in somewhere he doesn't belong. All of this had to happen. So if you saw this week's episode of The Royal Tutor, episode 11, do tell your thoughts down below on how you felt about this week's episode. Are you prepared for the last episode? And what are your thoughts? What do you believe is going to happen for the finale of this series? And will you continue to read the manga, or are you going to wait in hopes that there is at least an OVA or a second season? The links are in the description box as always, so you guys go check that out. And I'm Kimmy Chan of Anime Legends Podcast, and I will see you guys later. Bye!